Hey everyone, welcome back to the All Music Matters Than That podcast. I'm your host, Brian. And today I actually welcome back a special guest. It's Tony Ross, and he's now going by the Kai Machine these days, but he used to go by That Samato Effect when he was with his buddy Stuart. And way back in the day, we actually did an interview together when we had Stuart and Tony on. They were promoting That Samato Effect at the time, right? But we welcome Tony back. How you been today, Tony?
Yeah, hi. Everything's good. I'm pleased to be back on the podcast, and great to be talking to you again, Brian.
Well, actually, it happened quite by accident because I saw the Kai Machine, and it was like one of those things. I figured it was 50-50, and then I see the message like, Brian, it's Tony Ross. I'm like, oh, that's the deal. So I had to laugh. I was like, oh man, we got Tony back again. So that's cool. All right.
Yeah, it's been a long transition. I mean, I don't want to get into, I can talk about that Sfumato effect a little bit later on if you like, but in between, I ran my own rodeo show. The rodeo show? I've already made a mistake. I'd love to actually organize my own rodeo show, but I wouldn't have the first clue about how to run that. No, I ran my own radio show and I called it the Ross House of Music. And I think I did that for about a year and a half. And I love promoting other bands and other musicians in the indie community. I played our own music, but I played a lot of music from a lot of other people as well. So unfortunately, if you heard my phone go off, then I do apologize. I will now actually kill that. Give me 2 seconds. Yeah, since the new iOS update, you actually have a mute phone on the button on the phone, which is quite good. So yeah, I did that radio gig for a year and a half, and I enjoyed promoting other bands, and it was really good fun. And then slowly, listening to all that good music out there, and listening to a load of other colleagues and a lot of friends and contacts who were just doing their own solo projects, I was actually inspired to do my own project after many years. And I came up slowly with the idea to create the Kind Machine and then just write and record the music that I always wanted to.
That's pretty cool. But I guess in Germany, because you're still living in Germany at the time, or
yeah, I'm still living here in Essen in Germany. I haven't moved yet, and I'm still a resident here. So God knows how many years I've been in Germany. But we left Berlin in around about 2015, and we came here, and I've been here ever since.
Actually, I was in Germany not too long ago, but mainly along the Rhine. So I started off in Switzerland, kind of jumped in and around there a little bit, even went up to Jungfraujoch for a little while.
Yeah. All right. Well, I first came to Germany in 1994, and I landed in a place called Bonn, which was the capital of Germany at the time before the reunification and the fall of the Berlin Wall. So I know the Rhine area quite well. The Rhine, of course, is famous for its big cities like Cologne, which is not far from here. In fact, I was there a couple of weeks ago. And also Königswinter, and Koblenz as well. So yeah, it's a nice part of the world, but I live in what's called the Ruhrgebiet, which is the industrial area of Germany, and the mentality and the culture is slightly different from the Rhineland. The only way that I could possibly equate it so maybe people could understand is that maybe this area of Germany, part of the Ruhrgebiet, is a bit more like Pittsburgh, a bit more like, the industrial area. Of course, Essen is famous, of course, for its association with its munitions factories, which, kind of powered 2 world wars. We don't want to go down that road, but it's every day there's an unexploded bomb. Every day I get a warning message. I don't know whether you have this in the States, but we have like warning apps on our phone that say, hey, there's a natural disaster coming. And almost every other day we will get some alarm saying there's an unexploded bomb somewhere in the town. Normally after a construction site, rocks up and starts to build something. And then, of course, the whole area has to be evacuated because it has to be, exploded under controlled conditions. So 2,000 people are evacuated, hospitals are evacuated. So Essen is quite famous for that, obviously for its history, its industry, of course, its munitions factories, and the Krupp family. I originally arrived in Germany in the Rhineland. So yeah, and I kind of learned my German there. So it's quite funny. The German that I can speak, a lot of my accents in German, although of course it's heavily English, are based on sort of like the way that you pronounce words in the Rhineland area. And of course it's completely different in here in the Ruhrgebiet. And then it was different in Berlin. I lived in Berlin from around about 2000 till 2013. So there the accent is slightly different as well. So yeah, that's my German story anyway.
I'd say my first overseas trip was to Germany, but it was also Austria as well, or as the Germans would say, Österreich. Since
Yeah.
I never spoke German, so I know that. But it was actually just between two cities, and we saw. Actually, the highlight of that trip was actually, I think it's Fusen, where the Neuschwanstein Castle is. Is that where the town is?
Yeah. I don't know the name of the city, but there's this fairy tale castle down in southern Bavaria, yeah, which is belonged to some crazy prince or some crazy king, who I think actually ended up going insane. In fact, I can't remember the name. I think Ludwig rings a bell, but I've never been to. I've been to Munich a couple of times. But only just to visit and watch a football match, funny enough. So I'm kind of rooted in this part of Germany. So I don't really know southern Germany. Again, like most countries, there's a different culture. People wear lederhosen and, men in leather trousers, and they speak slightly differently. When they speak amongst themselves, they will actually have a different dialect and it will almost be different words for things. And then when they speak with other Germans, they speak what's called Hochdeutsch, which is German that everyone can understand. It's a bit like and Austrians can understand. So I've never been down to the south, but the culture is different. I'm pretty much rooted in the western half of Germany, apart from my 15 years in Berlin, which is almost like 90 kilometers from the border with Poland. So, I lived all over in Berlin, but of course, Berlin during the war was separated. So you had an East and West Berlin, and I got to know a lot of people who were former citizens of the DDR, which was the Deutschen Democratic Republic, or the GDR as it was known, and obviously West Germans. And they're completely different again. So I've kind of done the rounds in Germany, so I'm quite familiar with Berlin, and my roots are here, probably in the western half of the country.
I actually did not know about this, but Switzerland, because you're surrounded by technically 4 countries if you're counting Austria with its little peak trying to sneak in there too. But
yeah,
a good chunk of the northern part speaks like a different sort of German in a way. So it's almost like sort of like how you see like the UK, for instance. You got the English, and you got the Scottish and the Irish. So it's almost
absolutely.
Like everyone speaks English.
You've got different accents, and I know I lived in the States for a few years, as you probably recall from our last conversation. And I was in DC, but if you went down to south to like North or South Carolina, or you went somewhere, you'll find that regional accents everywhere. People spoke slightly different down in Savannah as they would say, for example, in Boston.
Yeah, so it's totally awesome trip. But Baden-Baden, Rudesheim, I hope that's how you pronounce it. I'm sorry, but
I think it's Rudesheim.
Rudesheim.
Yeah.
And I did get to Cologne. I actually went to the big church that's there. It's all soot covered. I guess they're still cleaning it after all this time. And
yeah, I was just there the other day, actually. And the first thing I said was, man, they should really clean this place up. I was in London not so long ago, and Big Ben was under restoration for years, and they cleaned it. And when the scaffolding came off, it was, wow, it looks fantastic. And I've often thought, why don't they do that with the cathedral in Cologne? I think it's 900 years old, and it's one of the most famous Gothic cathedrals in the whole of Europe. The architecture outside is stunning, but of course, it's, to appreciate it would be nice if it was clean, but it's a massive undertaking. It would cost billions of euros or dollars or whatever. So, but I was just there a couple of weeks ago. I went to a very large music store. I did post a video on TikTok, and I ended up buying a synthesizer, which I didn't want to. But it's also got the largest music store, I think, in Europe, definitely in Germany. It's a huge warehouse full of packed of so many instruments. I mean, for example, if you want to buy a bass guitar, they got like 600. I mean, where do you start? I mean, they just literally have every kind of instrument you could ever want to buy. So, I know Cologne quite well.
I actually went in there, and the interesting thing was they have the remains of the 3 wise men, or magi, however you want to say it, tucked in like a golden sort of, we could say like sarcophagus in a way, or maybe sarcophagus isn't the right word, but I don't want to say like, it's a little bit of an antique sort of spot right there too. You can't really
I know what you mean. It's right at the end of the cathedral, right? I don't know what they call it, the nave. I mean, you go to where the altar is, and it's just behind there, isn't it? So
something like that. Yeah.
It's quite impressive. Yeah.
Still a beautiful city. And a nice little thing that me and my family actually do is whenever we go to cities, we see if there's a Hard Rock cafe. And there was actually one, it's a little further down the street right there too, but we used to collect shot glasses. Now we're collecting these little magnets that actually look like small guitars. So it's basically a way of saying we were there. So
Yeah, the funny thing is, when I lived in the States, I used to rock up to a city, and the first place you probably wouldn't go want to go and eat is a Hard Rock Cafe, and you'd have to collect a fridge magnet to put on your fridge. I mean, it was almost like or buy a T-shirt or something. Yeah. So I think I spent all my time living in the US running around wearing various Hard Rock Cafe T-shirts from various cities.
this must be how tradition started to grow. So I don't know. So, all right, so that's all cool. All right, but just to fill in the audience real quick, we're actually doing something a little different this time because last time I did ask Tony here a whole lot of questions and everything. So now we're going to kind of jump back and forth where I'm going to ask him a question. He's going to ask me a question. Let's go back and forth. And I guess let's see where it goes.
Yeah, sure. This should be fun.
Yep.
Who's going to go first?
I'll go first because actually it is a little bit of a multi-layered question right here because it does tie into you and Stewart with the whole that Samato effect as well as the Kai machine. So I guess just to phrase it maybe a little differently, I guess since we last talked, I guess what were you and Stewart up to, and they could lead into the Kai machine and even what's going on with that Samato effect.
Yeah, we released our album, Where Are the Angels? We finally, after 2 years, finished recording that. And I think we spoke to you at the time about the release of that album. So after that, in the following year, Stuart had a few health issues. So did I. So we really didn't actually record too much. We did actually record a couple of other singles. Once every 3 or 4 months, we would push something out. The problem is, of course, as we all live remotely, so we were recording tracks over the internet, and they would be sent to me, and it took time to compile them and took time to produce and record them. So we released a couple of singles, and then things went a little bit quiet for a while, and we didn't do very much. And I don't think we've actually recorded anything now for at least half a year, although we all keep in touch. The bass player, John Bicknell, went on tour with a band that he used to be a member of in the 1970s, 1980s called Squire. And they were very, very active in the mod revival scene. In fact, they were actually playing all the big venues in London around about that time in the 1970s, 1980s. And that kind of music was coming back. So he actually rather than record bass lines for me or for us, went off on a tour, on like a year-long tour supporting other acts. So he went up to Liverpool and played the Cavern Club, went to London and played other famous venues. And so he really wasn't available or around. So we really took a bit of hiatus. We really didn't do anything for a year. And then slowly I then went into my radio gig. So I produced this show called The Ross Radio Show. I just started up my own internet radio station. And that was really cool because I got to listen to a lot of independent bands that I would never have known. For example, I got to know Joe Boo, who's legendary in the indie community, through that show. And I remember I decided that I needed a hook for my radio program. So I always made his music from the Reign of Fire, the last show I play on every single show. And yeah, I just got to meet so many cool people actually through that show, Joe Boo being one of them. Another artist that I got to know very well was an artist called Miss Happenings, who's Mish, who I think is also quite well known in the indie community, and we still communicate to this day. I love his music, and yeah, so that was quite a good gig. So that filled a bit of a gap, but then I slowly wanted to get back into doing music again, and I was inspired by a good friend of mine called Keith Chadwick, who has his own artist name. I think it's called Cerulean Blue. Is that how you pronounce the flower? Cerulean? I'm not certain. Anyway, so he was producing stuff on his own. Now, the problem is I don't have a voice. I can't really sing. So I thought, I can write music, but, I really would like to write songs, but I don't have a voice. And Keith kind of encouraged me and just said, go for it, man, just go for it. And I thought, well, okay, I'm really going to try it. So I thought that basically I wanted to create my own artist profile, because one of the things I found about doing the radio show is just I was, promoting everyone else's music, but I wasn't promoting mine, which was cool, but I didn't have time to do both. Putting a radio show together is a tough gig. You have to get all the submissions in. Most of them come in, they're not tagged. You have to tag them. Then you have to sort out a show. Then you have to sort out a running order. And then you want to say something about the bands to promote them. So you have to do a bit of research, have the band got a new record out, how many are in the band, where do they come from? So putting a show together was actually quite time consuming. I enjoyed it. It was great, but I couldn't actually do my own music, record my own music, or think about establishing myself as an artist. So what I decided to do was to, unfortunately, although it really hurt me, was I shut the radio station down. I said, sorry guys, can't do it anymore, unfortunately. I just then slowly concentrated on writing my own songs, and that's how the Kind Machine was born. I came up with the name Kind Machine basically because it's a reflection of our times. I like to think that I'm empathetic and I'm kind, and I just wanted to create music that just made people happy or put a smile on the face, or just people could dance to, or just generally just spread a bit of joy. I wasn't going to be like Bob Dylan and a guitar and talk about obviously how terrible the world is and all the bad things that are happening in the world. That's not what I wanted to do. It's not that I don't care, because I do care about these things, but the idea behind the Kind Machine was just to bring a bit of empathy and joy, and through music and everyone having a good time. It's just for 10 or 15 minutes, just forget what's going on. Not that we should forget it completely, because I'm quite active in politics, if you like. I do take a keen interest, but just for 10, 15 minutes, just to step off the mad merry-go-round, and then just have a bit of fun. So then I decided, well, what genre? I mean, I didn't want to be a multi-genre artist, so I decided that basically I've always loved synth pop, even from my early days. And I won't go into the long story of, how I came to play synthesizers, but I learned to play guitar first, and then I heard Gary Newman. And I remember it distinctly. I remember hearing Our Friends Electric on Top of the Pops. And then I went out and bought the album, which was Replicas, which was his second album. And from that moment on, I've said this in other interviews, I wanted to buy a synthesizer. I knew that I wanted to buy a synthesizer. I could not play piano or keyboard. I was a guitarist. But I thought, well, Gary Newman just plays with one finger, so hey, I can play with one finger. So from then on, I got interested in lots of bands like Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark and Cabaret Voltaire and Depeche Mode when they came along. Anybody who played a synthesizer, I was into. John Fox, for example, early Ultravox was another big influence. So all these bands I grew up and I loved. And then when I decided I wanted to create a genre for the Kind Machine, I thought, well, hang on a minute. I've been playing guitar and playing keyboards with that Sfumato effect, but I really do love synth pop. So I decided I was just going to write synth pop. And that's how the Kind Machine was born. And that's where we are. So I released my first single, which was called Hearts in Bloom, which I deliberately wanted to be completely poppy and just, pure synth pop. And I released a second record called Believe, which is a little bit more mellow. And that's the two records that I've done to date. So I'm busy writing new stuff. I'm in the middle of writing a third song, which is almost finished. I've got to write the lyric next week and record the melody, and then that will be coming out very soon. So that's how I went from that Sfumato effect to the Kind Machine.
Yeah, definitely an interesting story. And I think when we were talking earlier, it seemed like it was either a year or two ago when we had last talked about it, when we were talking about that Sfumato effect when Stewie was on here. And you guys still stay in touch? I guess, do you think you might get back together at some point?
That's the next part of the story, is that Stuart wants to write songs. The problem is we all have different motivations of why we want to make music. And that makes it a little bit more difficult. Some of us want to write music because we want people to listen to it. Some people want to write music because they just want to leave a legacy. I mean, they're not really into promoting or pushing their music. They just want to create it. They just want to write it, and they enjoy the process. So, we're all at different places, but recently we've all come together. The bass player has taken a bit of a break. John Bicknell has taken a sabbatical. So for 6 months, he's decided that he's just completely having nothing to do with music. Stuart's been in touch with me again, and he's writing songs. And I'm currently producing one song for him, which will probably lead to another one. And also, we now have the services of a very talented guitarist called Ben Hughes, who's played in local bands, is a very good guitarist, mainly because I don't want to play guitar anymore. That makes my job easier when I'm producing that Sfumato effect. So I can fully concentrate now on writing my music and fully concentrate on putting all my songwriting skills into the Kind Machine. And I can take a step back from that Sfumato effect and just be the producer. I mean, the thing is, of course, I'm the one with the technical knowledge, so I do all the mixing, I do all the production, and I'll end up sort of like putting the whole song together from demos that either Stuart or John or even Ben will actually send me. So the Kind Machine actually is slowly coming back into existence, and I think there'll be a new release coming up. In fact, I'm working on a song called People Watching, which was written by Stuart. He's going into the studio on Thursday to record the vocals. So as soon as we have that, I'll be mixing that and sending that off to be mastered, and then that will be released fairly quickly. So I'm pretty sure that once John comes back to us in the new year, we will be recording new material. But my main focus, of course, will be the Kind Machine. That's where I'm going to spend all my creative energy, because I couldn't do both. It's the same reason for the radio thing. If I was to invest emotionally as a songwriter, as an artist into that Sfumato effect, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing with the Kind Machine. So, but this way, I think we have a way forward. So we'll see more of that Sfumato effect in the future for sure.
All right, sounds good. Keep us posted on the socials. I guess whenever you got new material for Kai Machine, that's about to affect.
Yeah, we've had to resurrect the socials for that Sfumato effect. I will not be obviously promoting that Sfumato effect on my own socials. So I don't want any of this cross promotion thing. I want the Kind Machine to have its own identity and its own existence, and that's me and it's my music. Yeah. Me as an individual artist. And I'm not worried about taking credit for that Sfumato effect. I will probably end up managing their social media because none of the other guys know how to run social media. So I will probably end up doing that too. And I will do the best job I can. But my main focus is on the Kind Machine. So I see myself as a producer, as a mix engineer for that Sfumato effect. And I think that'll be my key role. But all the creative work will come from the other guys. And we've talked about that, and I think that's perfectly fine.
All right, sounds good. All right, now I pass it on to you.
Oh yeah, I think it was really cool because last time I didn't get to ask you questions, so I did think of one question because I know that you're a drummer, right, Bryan? So maybe it's like a two-part question. I mean, what were your earliest musical memories, and what made you settle on drums as an instrument?
Let's see. Drums definitely came a lot later, and then I'll kind of play into it here. But I think thinking back on it, then you figure like bass guitar and guitar, because back then me and my dad, we were real big into like listening to Metallica or Van Halen. I know I was like real big into Van Halen back in the day, but there were some other groups like Bruce Springsteen, Vertical Horizon, just to name like those ones. Because I think Three Doors Down. I always forget one, but I'm just gonna say those ones for now. But those were like the first sort of influences. And when I got to elementary school, I did a cello in 3rd grade. I did that all the way through middle school, high school. And unfortunately, when I went off to college, they didn't have an orchestral program. So unfortunately, I dropped the cello and unfortunately started collecting dust. Eventually, we did sell it. So, but that was like way after I graduated. But drums came by because of video games. There was a video game called Rock Band, and it was Rock Band 1. I think it was like after we figured out what Guitar Hero was like, and then we found out that this Rock Band had like a full set. It was a guitar player, you could have a bass player, vocalist. They didn't bring keys. The keyboard is to like way later. I think it was like the 3rd one they did, and they had a drummer. So first thing you always want to do is you're thinking the guitar player is the one that's getting all the chicks and everything in there too. He's the one that's flashy, doing all the solos and that sort of stuff. But drums, I think just one day I wanted to try it. And you of course go through the easy, medium, hard until you get to the expert part for like some of the songs. Because we get to like the bottom of the list, that's when the songs get like expertly a lot harder than they probably should be. So probably like the point of like Neil Peart or style. So but that was how it started with the whole drumming right there too. And as I kept building my whole drumming resume, if we want to say it that way, I started taking in more of like the heavier metals. So you get your death metal, a little black metal every now and again. Maybe just a couple right there too. I'm not really that invested into it. Then they had various genres of like the metal world, for instance. So some drummers that come to mind, we could definitely say Lars Ulrich from Metallica, because anything that has Metallica in it, it's going to have some sort of Lars Ulrich sort of influence to it.
Sure.
But I also say Alex Van Halen there too, because of what Van Halen did in my life. And then going into a lot more of like the heavier stuff, there's Pete Sandoval, the Commando from Morbid Angel, who was known for making the blast beat. Pretty much a prerequisite now for the death metal world, to be honest. I know I said George Corlius, even though I don't think I could ever play like him, to be honest, but he's a phenomenal drummer. He's part of the band now, but he also does some of his other works. I don't know if I think he does strictly more metal, and I think he might invest like maybe in some sort of jazz as well. I think that's how he has such complicated drum patterns and that sort of stuff. So
So how old were you when you got your first kit?
It was after college. If we're gonna say, oh, I feel like it has been actually almost 10 years. I want to say maybe 2018, to be honest. So,
Yeah.
so
So
that's
how old were you? That's what I meant to say.
oh, it's 2018. Let's see. Actually, maybe a little sooner. Well, the thing is, I'm 33 now, so I was definitely more so in my 20s then.
That's
So
interesting.
when I eventually did get into drumming, I was basically in my 20s at that point. So
Yeah, I often tune into this YouTube channel. What's it called? Drumeo. I watch that quite a lot. Is that the name of the channel? It's
probably
purely
one of the channels. So
yeah,
that's
it's one of
probably
these skits where basically you'll get some drummer to come and play someone else's song, but they don't know the song or they've never heard of it before. So in other words, they will actually they will actually play you they will play you the track, and then you have to come up with the drum pattern. So in other words, they'll actually take out the drum mix, and then they'll just play the music without the vocal, and then you actually have to design you have to record drums to it, and then at the end they'll do the big reveal, and they say, "Hey, did you know you were playing Limelight by Rush?" And then the drummer will say, "Whoa, no man, I've never heard of that." But it's interesting actually. If you watch the video, you can see how different drummers approach different types of things, and they instantly recognize when another drummer does a particularly something that's rather technical, and they say, yeah, wow, he plays it double time there. I didn't think of that. So I often watch that channel. I mean, I'm not a drummer, I've never played it, but I do actually enjoy rhythm. I mean, Phil Collins, because I was an early prog fan, was one of my favorite Genesis drummers, and I don't think he ever got enough credit for the drummer that he was. Everyone knows him as the big pop, icon and the guy who does all the hits and the frontman of Genesis. But for a long time, he was actually, playing in quite a complex prog band. I mean, Genesis played some really complicated stuff early on, so I've always admired him as a drummer, and I actually saw him play with his band Brand X once, which was a jazz fusion band, and I remember saying that he joined the band because he could just freak out and just play stuff, and I mean, that was jazz fusion. That was about as complicated as it probably gets, but I remember seeing him play live with Brand X when I was about 20 or 21, and he was phenomenal. He was really good, and of course I was always growing up being a big Rush fan, and Neil Peart, of course, is fantastic drummer. So technically I don't know too much about it, but I do actually like listening to well produced and well played drums. So and what can I say? I'm not a drummer, but I do admire them.
Plus, you also get the influences of like all the greats from the classic rock era there too. So obviously Neil Peart's, the Bill Wards, and
I kind
Ginger
of know all
Baker,
the classic people like Ginger Baker. I've really, of course, John Bonham. I grew up liking, if you like, the beginnings of heavy rock, like Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin. But when it came to metal, of course, metal's not really my genre, so I can't really name any. I couldn't name you the drummer for Metallica, for example. I only know the name of the drummer for the Foo Fighters because unfortunately he passed on, which is tragic. But I don't really know a lot of sort of metal drummers, if you like, and I'm sure because of the genre they play. I mean, you play this genre, don't you? I mean, technically you have to be really, really, really good. I mean, to bring it off effectively. All this syncopation with the double drums, with the double bass drum, and getting the timing right on that. I like to think that when I'm listening to, when I was doing my radio station, I thought I could always tell the difference between a metal band if it was just like programmed drums, like it was Superior Drummer or Easy Drummer, or whether it was a real drummer. And I still hear that a lot when I'm listening to music in the indie scene. I don't have anything against it, because the song's the most important thing. But sometimes I find that people program metal songs with absolutely impossible double drums. They're going like at 16ths or like 32s or something, and to play with that level of accuracy must be like impossible. I mean, how can a human actually do that? I know that some people can maybe, but anyway, so the point is I do actually enjoy listening to drums. So I take my hat off to you being a drummer.
Is So you're welcome. But I will say this, metal, it definitely gives you a nice workout. I'll tell you that much. So that's why I stick with it.
Because any song without rhythm, I mean, rhythm is the key thing. The rhythm section is the key for any song. So, a song, as you know, can live or die by obviously its vibe, if you like, its groove. And the groove comes from the rhythm section. So, if the two are locked together, then you can just put anything on top, and then basically if the groove is there, then generally the song will work out.
That's for sure. But I guess you did say you got some gear recently, so I guess.
Oh yeah, I managed to get some gear. Because one thing you need to do when you're producing music is, synth pop, is to have synthesizers. So, I decided, because I wanted to try and recreate an 80s feel to the music, because it's my decade and it's the music I love. And the bands that I mentioned, like Pet Shop Boys, OMD, Cabaret Voltaire, Kraftwerk, they're all sort of based in the 1970s, 1980s. So I knew that I needed some analog synths. I did actually have some virtual instruments. I mean, you can go out and buy computer software and you can play these synths. But I decided that I wanted to commit to sounds very early. I don't know whether people actually find this, but I hear this all the time from people who I watch on YouTube, who say, commit to a sound, commit to a sound. So I thought, I'm going to get external gear, and I wanted to try and record with external equipment. And the idea is that, you have to basically, choose a sound, and then you have to commit to it, because the way that you work with your DAW is you record something, and then you want to free up that synthesizer for another MIDI sound, so you record a bit of MIDI, you use the patch on your synthesizer, but then you want to use another sound on that synthesizer. So you have to bounce that MIDI to audio so that you can free up your synths to play something else. So, very early on, I love that, because you commit to a sound. I think the problem with software is that, you die by choice. You've got so many different bass sounds to choose from. You can spend hours. I've done it before. I sit here in front of my computer and I think, well, which bass sound am I going to go for? And you scroll through, and you've got so many different virtual instruments on your computer, and you've got so many different sounds, is that, your productivity just dies. I mean, who wants to spend 3.5 hours deciding what bass sound they want for their song? It's all about the song, right? You don't want to get bogged down. So I decided that I wanted to buy some external gear. So I did actually have over here, I had a Roland D50, which I bought in 1989. And on the other side, I've got a Korg DS8, which is an FM synthesizer. Try saying that when you've had a few drinks. Those are the two keyboards that I had, that I've had ever since, the late 1980s, 1990s. I bought the D50 new in 1989, and it's turned out to be a classic synth, because it's relatively old. But I decided I wanted to try and buy some more gear and get some more classic synths. So I did pick up a secondhand Yamaha DX7, which is a legendary synthesizer, and it's been on every single hit you can think of in the 1980s. It has that distinct DX7 piano sound. And then I went out and bought a couple of more synthesizers. I bought a Korg M1, which is also a classic workstation synthesizer, probably more heard in the 1990s. It has these sort of house dance piano sounds that are quite famous, that you'll hear on dance records. What's trance, that kind of thing, this kind of disco house trance record. So I wanted that sound, but then I really needed some classic analog sound. So I went out and bought a few they're called can't even say it, boutique synthesizers from Roland. So Roland actually had a shed load of classic synthesizers in the 1980s. For example, the Juno 60, the Juno 106, and the 1990s there was the I think it was called the JD 800, and then there was the JXP 80. Anyway, so there are smaller little modular synthesizers being re-released by Roland in the last 5 years that recreate or replicate these instruments. So I went out and bought a JU06A, which is an emulation of a Juno 106 and a Juno 60. I got the JD08, which is an emulation of the JD800 and the JX08. So I bought 3 synthesizers, all based on classic Roland models, because I want that particular sort of, 80s synth analog sound. So that was the gear that I bought, and then that led on to something else. I had to buy a new mixing desk, because suddenly then I had 8 stereo inputs and my mixing desk only had 2. So I had to buy a new analog mixing desk. I couldn't afford a digital mixing desk, so I went out and bought a analog one. And that's been the sum of my investment. So I've been really investing in external gear. And I like working with external instruments because, as I said, I quickly commit to a sound and I can move on. And I'm finding that my productions and my songwriting is a lot quicker too. And also, I remember in the 1980s, I used to get inspired by these sounds. So you just get a synthesizer and switch it on, you play it, and you hit a key, and you get inspired by something. So that's why I wanted to work with external equipment. So I've invested in that kind of equipment. I haven't really updated anything else in my studio apart from some rack gear to handle the audio routing into my mixing desk. I'm still using the same computer that I purchased. Actually, since we last spoke, I think I upgraded my PC, and I bought a couple of studio monitors from Adam Audio. I think they make really, really good monitors. They're a German company, so I've got to support the local economy here somehow. So I bought a couple of Adam Audio monitors. Yeah, and that's been it. And of course, I've been actually buying rebuying my vinyl collection that I sold 35 years ago. So I'm kind of spending money on gear because I have to remind myself how all this synth pop used to sound. So I've been going around to we call them flea markets here, or I don't know what you call them. I've been going around to these markets and picking up CDs for €1 or €2. Classic Depeche Mode CDs or classic CDs from Human League, for example, just so that I can remind myself what the genre used to sound like. Not that I'm going to copy it, but I mean, also they're very good for reference tracks, because when I'm mixing, I like to use a reference track. Most people do, to make sure that your music's in the ballpark, tonally, so to speak, and musically. So I bought these CDs because then I can actually rip them in a high enough audio quality to bring into my recording sessions and use them as reference tracks. So that's been it for gear. I did buy a couple of guitars that were on special offer. So, but you can see I've got a few guitars behind me that I don't play that much anymore. I might do one day. I might get back into it, but I can't afford any real Gibsons or Fenders, so I tend to buy Epiphone, I think they're called. Is it Epiphone? Yeah, Epiphone and Fender, but Squier editions, which are perfectly good enough for me to record with. I'm not a gigging musician, so I can't justify spending, thousands of euros on real Gibsons. So that's it for about a gear. Yeah.
And say he's going to, next thing you know, it's going to be hanging up in a Hard Rock Cafe. This was played by Tony Ross at one point.
I put a synthesizer. I put one of my keyboards up there and have it on the rack, and I'll sign it, and say played by the Kind Machine. Wouldn't that be something? Yeah. So I'm a bit gear obsessed, but I'm under control now. I just recorded a TikTok video and said that I suffer from gear acquisition syndrome. So I'm actually stopping myself from. I'm not going to buy anything on Black Friday. I almost bought a plugin yesterday, but then I realized I don't need this plugin. I have so many plugins now that that I just really don't want to spend any more money on plugins. It's crazy.
So short for gas in a way.
Yeah, exactly. They're just something. There's always that temptation. People preach this and say, "Oh, I'm going to take my music to the next level if I just had that plugin." Oh, I'm going to buy that plugin. That's going to make the difference between my music sounding crap and between it sounding absolutely brilliant. And of course, it's a lie. That's a manufacturing lie. It doesn't actually make your music sound any better. But then the advertising companies that sell the products want to make you think that if you just had that plugin, that would take you to the next level. And I've fallen victim, like thousands of other people in the past, of buying hundreds of Waves plugins that I've all uninstalled. And I bought lots of pro plugins from Isotope that I no longer use. There are some that I still use, but God, I mean, I've so much money I've wasted. So this Black Friday, I've said I'm not buying anything this Black Friday. I'm gonna discipline myself. Try.
I would say maybe go spend it on a good dinner or something like that. Get a nice big steak, for instance.
Yeah, exactly. So,
yeah.
As I wanted, before we get off the drummer things, I mean, I'm a big Rush fan, and I suppose the hot news is I've seen Rush about like 12 times, but not since the 1990s. And we thought they were done right, unfortunately, with Neil Peart, passing on. And they just recently announced they're going back on tour. I mean, what do you think about that? They're going to use a German drummer called Andrea Niels. I've never heard her, but apparently she's quite good. But hey, Rush are going back on tour. What do you think about that?
Well, it seems like the classic rock people don't just want to hang it up, for instance. So, yeah, the Rolling Stones, for instance, they're still going out there in their 80s, they're still saying can't get no satisfaction. That's that whole sort of deal right there too. Or even Kiss doing probably the millionth farewell tour, whatever it is. So I think for Rush, it feels like it's hard just to hang it up, especially when you've had probably even through the stress or maybe even the hard times as that well too. You really loved going out on the stage, making any music. So you end up getting like a polarization, for instance, because when you get, in this case, a drummer who's filling in the professor's shoes, Neil Peart in that case, it's some pretty big shoes to fill, let alone try to like imitate, let alone try to play like the exact same way that Neil was kind of going about it. So of course people are going to criticize that, be like, that's not Neil Peart. That's just some woman trying to step in and try to imitate, and probably not the greatest at it. But I honestly don't know. But it's their call, so I'm not one to judge. They're not coming to my neck of the woods of Pittsburgh, so I'm kind of a little bummed about that. But I think those tickets would have been like $200 to upwards of $1,000 if we were being realistic here, because that's how it was with Paul McCartney's concert when he came through here. So
yeah, it's a bit like Oasis. They were a very big Britpop band in the 1990s, and they decided, the two brothers decided they didn't want to kill each other anymore, and they were going to go back on tour. But the tickets, I mean, they were selling for astronomical sums, and also Ticketmaster were upping the prices. I don't know the exact story, but some people were really upset because they found out that tickets were really, really expensive, and they felt they were being ripped off. But yeah, these people want to go back on tour and they want to keep playing. I think the story that I read with Rush was that they just, Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson used to jam together and just realized, hey, these songs are really great. We really enjoy playing these songs. Alex Lifeson admitted he didn't realize how difficult they were to play. But, it's the music and they're proud of them. And I don't think they can ever replace Neil Peart, but I think they will just basically go and pay tribute to him. And they'll get to play their songs live on stage again. And being a big Rush fan personally, I probably won't get to see it because they're not coming to Europe. Yeah, I think that's a real cool thing.
I think, funny enough, this is way back in the day, I think, when they were just starting to get their hands dirty. And I think their very first concert when they came to the States was in Pittsburgh. It was what was used to be called, I think it was called the Civic Arena back in the day.
Yeah.
So that was the first ever one. And my dad actually went to it. So it was one of those things, damn, why didn't you have an iPhone camera at the time? That would have been so nice. So
yeah. You wanted to talk about people, unfortunately, who passed on. I mean, because Brian, you very kindly sent me some questions so that I could do some preparation. And one of the things you said, let's talk about people who'd passed on in 2025. Do you know? And I thought, yeah, Ozzy Osbourne passed on. But, I can't think of, you mentioned Kiss recently, and I'm sorry, I'm going to show my ignorance. Didn't one of their guitarists recently pass away?
Ace Frehley, yeah. I guess somehow he had fell. I don't know the whole backstory about how it happened, but he fell, had a brain bleed, and then he bought a farm afterwards, as they would say. So that's peace to all those guys. But I guess, did you know any other musicians outside of Ozzy and Ace Frehley who had passed away? Did you know that?
No, not really. I'm sure there are a multitude of really, really talented people who you would say, oh my God, has he gone? I'll tell you one thing that I didn't realize, being into the genre that I'm in now, which is synth pop, is that I was a huge fan of Talk Talk. And I think the name of the lead singer was Hollis, I think his name was. I can't remember his first name. Terrible, because he's passed away. But I remember having a conversation with somebody, and they said, oh, yeah, he passed away a few years ago. And I said, you what? Are you kidding? So I can't even keep up. If I don't know, basically, somebody who passed away in a band that I really, really liked and admired, I think he passed away about like 8 years ago. I've got no chance of knowing who actually passed away this year. But Ozzy Osbourne, yeah, I mean, I played in a few cover bands before I sort of got involved with that Somato Effect and my own project. And we always sort of used to laugh and model ourselves on Black Sabbath. We would always, joke with each other during rehearsals. We'd take a scene out of whether it be Spinal Tap, that amp, it goes up to 11, I mean, we would always, and Ozzy Osbourne was a bit of a, I wouldn't say a joke figure, but I mean, we always used to laugh about Ozzy because, I mean, he was so outrageous. I mean, I remember that story where he supposedly bit a bat's head off and he was on stage. And I remember watching the series The Osbournes, which for me was just like, very, very funny. But the poor guy was obviously completely out of his head. I mean, he must have fried his brain on God knows how many drugs that he actually took. I mean, he later became clean, of course, but Ozzy Osbourne was a bit of a legend. Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of Darkness. One thing that I do remember was that during the Osbournes was that he was setting up a gig in, I don't know, in the States somewhere. And he was there looking at the stage before it was being set up. And the people and all the engineers wanted to show him all the lights and the effects. And then halfway through the show, there started, all these bubbles came out. and he said, "Bubbles?" He said, "Bubbles?" He said, "I'm Ozzy Osbourne. I'm the Prince of Darkness. What the are all these bubbles?"
I did show that. Yeah, I see those little clips. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
That was just typical. That was typical Ozzy, But the Blizzard of Oz. I've heard that album. It's a really good album, and I think it was quite an influential album at the time. And of course, his work with Black Sabbath is legendary. With War Pigs, which is a personal favorite of mine, and a Paranoid, and of course the first few Black Sabbath albums are legendary and are credited with inventing, if you like, heavy metal single-handedly. Purely because the story is Tony Iommi, I think his name. He severed his finger, didn't he, in an accident? So he couldn't play. So he basically invented playing bar chords. I mean, like 2-note or 3-note bar chords. Playing the root chord, because he didn't have his 4 fingers to play a proper bar chord. So he kind of invented this sort of, these riffs, like you find on Iron Man and War Pigs, basically by using just 3 fingers, because he couldn't use his middle finger or his other finger. So they kind of reinvented or invented the genre completely by themselves. So Ozzy Osbourne, rest in peace. That's the amount of influence I can say that Black Sabbath have had on my music. No, I can't. We could Google it now, but I mean, this is supposed to be a professional podcast. We should have actually researched it beforehand. I'm sure there's some other people who've passed on, unfortunately. But one thing I will say is that a lot of people, now I'm getting I'm older than you, Brian. I'm getting into my 60s. And there are a lot of people in all walks of life, not political, but in with the arts, who suddenly, we're getting to that age where we're just moving on. When I was a teenager, people like David Bowie were always like 15 years in front of me. Now I'm 60 something and they're getting on for 70 something. So they're all slowly, I look at Paul McCartney the other day and I think, Paul, you're looking a bit old. He's still touring at 90 or 80 or something. I don't know. But it's kind of now I'm getting to that stage where all the heroes that I grew up listening to are slowly leaving us, but their music will stay with us forever, of course. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, Ozzy was the big one for me because it struck me as sudden because he just did that Back to the Beginning tour, or I should say just concert, really, because it was really just one show. But he struck me as someone who could have lived a good few more years, to be honest, because it just seemed like he could do everything, but he just was too stupid to die. Irrespective of term,
a great personality. I mean, there were so many different. There was someone else who, of course, talk about Taylor Hawkins as well. There's a modern example because, as I said, I really didn't know about him until he passed on, but he was such a great drummer, obviously, and was such a huge influence for the Foo Fighters, who are probably everyone knows the Foo Fighters, but unfortunately, we lose people every single day. I guess it's part of his existence, isn't it? We arrive and we move on.
You never know what happens till someone leaves, or you never know what you got till it's gone, or something like that. I think that's how the saying goes.
Exactly. I mean, I bought some new gear. What gear have you bought recently? Is that a new microphone?
This one actually I had for a while, but last time when we were chatting, when Stuart was here, we actually were using Skype. So I was using my Focusrite 18920, and I had one of my AT 1000s, and that was the one I was using. This one's a bit more. This is a Shure MV7 actually. So this one's more of a dynamic mic. The other one's where.
Yeah, sure. It has a reputation for being slightly underpowered. I mean, do you have to give it a bit of a dB boost? Are you running it through some kind of preamp, or are you actually running through a mixer and giving it a bit of a dB boost?
Actually, no. I just plugged it in right to my computer. It takes a nice little
Yeah.
USB. So works out pretty nice. I mean, maybe I just bumped up the audio a little bit just in the settings, but that's about it. But so that way we moved on to use StreamYard because the miserable people at Microsoft did like the fact people were getting something for free. So they took Skype away. So that's why
Yeah, you see, talking about things dying, look at Skype. I mean, it's a bit like today we say, "Oh, I'm going to Google that." I mean, in the early days of video conferencing, we would just say, "Oh, I'll Skype you." Yeah, I mean, it was so synonymous, and that was another thing that died. When they pulled the plug on Skype, I can understand why they did it. But I thought, oh man, that's another thing that's gone. I mean, Skyping, we can't Skype anymore. We just have to Zoom or whatever it's called. I think Skyping has been replaced by Zooming, hasn't it? I'm gonna send you a Zoom, or I'm gonna Zoom with you, or something. Whatever the kids say these days, I can't keep up anymore. But
it's basically these sort of ones like StreamYard. That's what we're using right here. But they moved it all to Microsoft Teams, so I don't know if that's the replacement to say the least. But StreamYard does a trick. I mean, at least it's a lot easier to join, so it works out.
I looked to doing a live stream for my radio show, and I did look at StreamYard. I wanted to sort of multiple stream. I wanted to stream my radio show live on YouTube, but then maybe on other platforms, simultaneously on StreamYard or maybe on Facebook. I like StreamYard. I did actually try it out for a while. The pricing was a little bit, for the pro level, the pricing is a little bit. I thought, oh, I'm paying subscriptions for so much these days. I mean, should we talk about subscriptions and how people hate them? I'm not going to go down the road because it seems you can't get anything these days without having a subscription, right? Nothing's for free. And if it is, it's just loaded with advertisements. I mean, how many times have I gone onto your channel, thought, I'm really interested in this interview, but it gets interrupted 4 times by advertising, and then you have to wait until the second advert finishes so you can hit the skip button so that I can get on. I mean, nothing's free these days, of course. I guess subscriptions is the way to go, but I thought that the subscription model for StreamYard was a little bit too expensive for what and I was paying for the radio station, I was paying for the radio servers. I was actually investing a lot of money running my own radio station for zero return. I didn't mind doing it because I just wanted to share the love of music with fellow indie artists and musicians, and I wanted to play their music and just enjoy it. So I was never in it to make any money, but there again, I had to look at running costs, and then I thought, no, I can't afford stream. I think they wanted like 29 euros or something for the full version, and I decided not to use it. But it's a good platform.
Yeah, it's at least one of the couple expenses I have. So, but it's at least a yearly subscription, we should say. So that's probably why it looks like it's $400 or something. So they'll give it to you cheap for the 1 year. It's like 200 something, but then they'll bump it back up afterwards, which is kind of a little bit of a downer. But hey, this is the easier alternative, I should say. So,
have you bought any new gear for your kit? I mean, your drum kit. Have you stayed with the same drum kit, or are you have you invested any money in expanding your kit?
Well, the new kit I have right now, which I don't know how many of my drum covers you've actually seen recently, but it's now a Roland VAD 706. And actually, the 2 crashes or 2 Chinas I have on the sides, those are actually cymbals from my original drum sets. My dad just bought me 2 stands for them. And unfortunately, the one stand's not the greatest because it doesn't go as high up as the other one does. So I make do with it. So
I was in my music shop the other day, and I was quite shocked. I was actually going to buy I can't remember what I was buying, a couple of cables that I needed. And there was a drummer in there, and he wanted to try out some kits and stuff. And this is the thing that really shocked me. He wanted to buy some Zildjian. Is Zildjian the name of the manufacturer? Wanted to buy some cymbals. He wanted to see them. The guy came out with a box, and this is what really made me laugh, was actually to handle them. He put on white gloves. He actually put on white gloves and opened the box. And before he touched the cymbals, he lifted them out. And then he made the person who wanted to buy them also put gloves on before touching the cymbals as well. So, I mean, what's that all about?
Well, we're saying they're made of gold right now. In that case, burn that baby down and go sell it, man. You're going to get some money out of that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, is there something, like if the finger touches, I don't know, what are they made of? It's made of some bronze or metal. I can't remember. But I mean, do you oxidize the metal if it comes into contact with the finger? I mean, what's that all about? I don't know. Anyway, I thought that was quite weird.
It sounds weird, but I mean, I have no idea. That's why I stick with these guys, because the 6 don't break. You can definitely beat up the cymbal as much as you can right there too. So even though it's black colored, So
Now,
just
the
makes
key
it
thing,
easier.
Brian, is when you're doing a drum solo, can you actually sort of like hit the snare and then throw the stick up in the air and catch it and then come down and hit on the beat? So in other words, you throw it up, right, on the beat, throw it up in the middle, catch it, and then come it down and hit it on the beat like all these Flash guys do?
Well, I'm not that flashy, so unfortunately, I don't know if I can answer that one. So I think I see some people put the sticks on fire. For instance, they'll play a song, and I'm like, how are you not accidentally burning your face? To be honest, because that's what I'd be worried about. So
Yeah.
but in terms of gear, really, not really much. In fact, if anything, I've just been kind of rolling with what I got. Because for my drum covers, I put it in for my DAW from the module into my DAW right here, and then, or I should say, into my Focusrite 18920, and then it goes into my DAW, which I use Logic. And then that just gets the audio part in there. Then I put in the MIDI after I just play on my drum set just to try to at least mimic the song as best I can, because obviously you're going to mess up at some points with some of the fills because you're trying to do it note for notes, which is a pretty hard thing to do.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. But
No,
I think
I've got back into the world of I used to use Easy Drummer or Superior Drummer when I was actually most of the drum tracks for the album Where Are the Angels from That's from After Effect I recorded using Easy Drummer, and I would program them using MIDI, which took an awful long time, I must admit, and it was very hard to make them sound quite realistic. Looking back, I could have actually done a better job because I was 3 or 4 years ago now, I was actually, producing songs for this album, and I can do everything a little bit better now with more experience. But yeah, I'm kind of using software drums as you do with, I'm a single guy and I'm writing synth pop and, bands like the Human League and Heaven 17, bands that I really love, all used computer drums, didn't they, back in the day? So I'm now using software drums, emulations of Linn drums, which was quite popular back in the day. There is actually a couple of, I'm still using Easy Drummer. They have a model called Synthwave. So they've sampled all these, classic Linn drums and electronic drums from the 1980s, including, the boo 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 boo. Yeah, and if you, I'm not going to re-record "Ring My Bell" so, by Anita Bell or anything like that anytime soon. So I don't use those sounds. But yeah, I still use software drums. I'd like to use a real drummer. Because even OMD, Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, they're actually touring with a real drummer these days. So, I think that's still the better sound.
yeah. Actually, I was thinking you need more cowbell. Just kind of bring up the Saturday Night Live sort of.
Oh, that's a joke. Yeah, more cowbell. Absolutely.
Yeah. But just to answer your question, not really nothing else in terms of gear wise. I've been just kind of rolling with ever since I had my Christmas present to myself, and then still kind of same setup and everything. So.
Yeah, I did actually buy another synth. I bought a synth from Behringer. I think that's how you pronounce the name, or Behringer. And they're doing really good clone models now of famous synthesizers. And rather than Roland, for example, they've brought out these boutique synthesizers, which are based on their own classic synthesizers. So, for example, the JU06A, which is based on the Juno 60, Juno 106, which was a classic polysynth from way back in the day. It didn't have certain features, for example, like an arpeggiator or an onboard. So now they've released a new model. They actually put an arpeggiator on, which is actually quite good. So they've taken their old classic and they've tried to improve it with modern technology. Now, Behringer or Behringer, however you want to pronounce them, have just recreated synthesizer. They don't do that. They just recreate it as it was. They're not going to build any new whistles and bells. So I picked up a Pro 800, which is based on a Prophet synthesizer. The Prophet 5, of course, was another very famous synthesizer from the 1980s. And the successor, or the smaller version to the Prophet 5, was the Prophet 60. And this Pro 800 from Behringer is actually based on the Prophet 60. So it's a complete, absolute, sonically reproduction, a faithful reproduction of the original. But I quite like that because the R&D team don't have to worry about building new features into their synthesizers, and I think they offer it at a really affordable price. I mean, I was actually in the music store, so I could actually buy a Prophet 10 for like 4,800 euros, but I could pick up something that can get me somewhere near the same sound for like 260 euros, and it's from Behringer. So that was the last piece of gear that I actually bought. I didn't mean to buy it. I didn't know I wanted it, but I just thought, well, at 260 euros, I can't afford to buy a Prophet 5, and I'd love to get those sounds. I'm going to pick this up. And the other thing that I like about external synthesizer I forgot to say is that I'm not using my mouse and keyboard. It's all got knobs on. It's all tactile. I can actually change sounds by twisting knobs, and I kind of like that. It's a bit old school. And that's the other thing that attracted me to external synthesizers and gear, is that I can use sliders and knobs, and you can instantaneously sort of hear how you're affecting the sound. But I just prefer working that way. I prefer working with real instruments. I guess that might have come from when I started out as a guitarist. As a guitarist, of course, I mean, you physically have a relationship with the guitar that you're holding, either the feel or the way it feels, or is it heavy, is it not heavy? The strings, there's something tactile about it. And when I was working with virtual instruments inside the box, so to speak, is that I was just using the mouse and the keyboard to change things. I have a MIDI keyboard to actually play them, but I didn't have that feeling, and I love it now. I've got 3 or 4 synthesizers here on my desk, and I can just, I'm just going to twist a couple of knobs. Let's see what sound that makes. Oh yeah, I'm going to change the filter on the oscillator. Oh wow, that sounds great, and I really like that. It's the same reason why I decided to collect and give up Spotify and streaming music, is that I remember growing up having that personal relationship with music where you would touch things. So I'm getting into CDs again, but more into vinyl, because it just reminds me of when I used to sit in my bedroom when I was a kid. You'd get the Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon album out, and you'd pull it out, and there'd be this poster inside, and you'd open up the sleeve, and you'd listen to the music, and you'd read the lyrics. And there was this sort of tactile, the act of touching the vinyl, you're touching the music, and you put it on the turntable and you play it, and you listen to the entire album. These days, of course, is you just, if you want to get into Pink Floyd, you'll go on Spotify, you'll stream a couple of tunes, maybe from Wish You Were Here. No, I don't like that. And you'll go on, you'll stream the next thing. I know that's what everyone does these days, and of course it's very great because you can carry in your pocket every single song that's ever been released with you. I mean, it's massively convenient. But that's another reason why the connection between twisting knobs on synthesizers and starting my vinyl collection again is just that it reminds me of my youth, and I kind of liked music back then, and there was a more personal relationship, I think, with music. It wasn't also quickly consumed. You would buy an album, maybe 4 of the 10 tracks were complete rubbish, but you would listen to it and you would listen to it, and then you would get into it slowly, and then suddenly, before you knew it, that was your favorite album. I think that was a bit romantic, but that's what I like about music. Yeah.
Actually, I do remember one of the questions I did ask was your motivation that kind of got you into music. So it seemed like in your youth, you kind of grew up with a lot of the classic rock star groups that were kind of like making it big at that point there too. Was it kind of, you wanted to imitate what those guys were doing, or was it some sort of personal drive?
Oh yeah, no. I was always interested in music. My neighbor and he was into disco music and I was into rock music. So I don't know why. I think it was that when I was a kid growing up in the 1970s, shows you how old I am, is that my parents were very strict. So you had to be in bed by 6 o'clock. I mean, that was it. No matter what, you were in bed by 6 o'clock, lights out, that was it. And they didn't want to see you until morning. But one of the few times I was allowed to stay up late was to watch this chart show called Top of the Pops. I don't know whether you've heard of it in the States. It's quite very famous in the UK. It was a hourly long program, and it would just play all the songs that were obviously in the top 100. You have your Billboard 100. We had our UK top 100. And I was allowed to stay up late because I showed interest in it. And I would sit there and I would listen to music. So I liked some of the bands I heard. I remember some of the first bands. I was into the glam rock phase. So I liked early bands like T-Rex and Slade and The Sweet. So, you would hear it on Top of the Pops. I would have like £1.50 pocket money. A single back then would cost 45 English pence. You'd take your pocket money, you'd go down to the record store and you'd buy what you heard. Yeah. And that's how I started to like music. And of course you listen to music and then invariably it moves you. I mean, music is something that is emotionally felt. And then I basically would find myself jumping around the bedroom, holding a cricket bat. Not a baseball bat, a cricket bat or a tennis racket. And you would rock out and, you would think you were, Jimmy Page or something. And then I kind of realized, I really like this music thing. But also it was kind of an escapism. I would go out to my bedroom, I'd take my records. I eventually then actually started to listen to bands like Led Zeppelin. They were another early influence on me. And I bought all their albums and listened to them. Then I got into the punk thing. And the punk thing was the real breakthrough, because up to then I was listening to a lot of prog music like Yes and technically they were very good. And I thought, man, you've got to be technically gifted. You must have to spend like 10 years at the Royal Academy of Music before you can make music like this. But the punk movement threw all that out the window. They basically said, all you need to do is learn 3 chords, make a song, doesn't matter how it sounds, and you create art, and that's it. And then I said, Mum, I want a guitar. Please get me a guitar. Please get me a guitar. And then I was off on my journey. So I really got influenced by bands, obviously like the Sex Pistols and the Clash. The Sex Pistols, I followed their entire story from beginning to end because, one, they had a certain notoriety, yeah. Anarchy in the Use, QK, God Save the Queen. I mean, it was banned. I remember sort of ordering the album, which was called Never Mind the Bollocks, which today doesn't sound, it's harmless, isn't it? Right back then, it was, I remember I had to go into the record store and I ordered it, and I said, and I took great pride in being a bit of a rebel and saying, I'd like to order Never Mind the Bollocks, please, by the Sex Pistols. And of course, the shop assistants would go, don't say that out loud. So I ordered it, and then when I went to pick it up, it wasn't displayed anywhere in the store. It was given to me secretly in a brown paper bag, like taken out like some kind of pornographic magazine that wasn't allowed to be displayed. And they would take it out, right? And I would say, okay, where's your money? Good, now go away. And it had that shock element to it. So I mean, I was a big Pistols fan. Tragically, of course, Sid Vicious joined the band and it all went south. But and bands, then I went into the post-punk thing. I was, into the Clash, into other bands like Echo and the Bunnymen and The Fall and The Cure. The Cure were a very good band. They were sort of this kind of sort of post-punk indie band, and they later sort of like became this goth band. I don't know why, but then, but early on, they were just creating sort of what we call post-punk, post-new wave music. So, I got into all that and I learned how to play guitar. And then I had listened to Kraftwerk when I was much younger, when I was 14 or 15, and I was influenced by electronic music, Tangerine Dream and Vangelis, don't know how you pronounce his name. And so when Gary Newman came onto the scene and early bands like Depeche Mode and synthesizers, that was it. I was hooked. And then I actually met Stuart. We decided to form a band that was exactly like Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark. So he played bass, like McCluskey, who's the lead singer for OMD, and I played keyboards, and I had these really crappy keyboards, and we wrote some really terrible songs, but they were the inspiration, obviously, for me getting into music. That was my first ever band with Stuart. We called ourselves Pretzel Logic. I don't know why, and we played a couple of gigs, and then everything went from there. I went back to playing guitar for a little bit, and I stopped playing synthesizers, and that's why I'm so happy I'm playing synthesizers again now, is because I've almost taken like a 25-year break where I try to play guitar. I play guitar in various cover bands. I play guitar on the album for that Somato Effect. But now I've decided, keyboards and synthesizers is what I love. And that's what the Kai Machine's all about.
Yep. Definitely the life story of Tony Ross.
The life story. Is I talk a lot. Anyone who's ever watched me, anyone who's ever listened to my radio shows or interacted with me on social media knows that I can talk an awful lot. The trouble is my brain moves too fast and then the words don't come out correctly and I end up sounding, grammatically a bit of a numpty. But it's just my brain works too fast. But
yeah, I know that feeling. So it's all good there too. So, but I guess, what other questions did you have for me?
I just wanted to ask basically, I did actually, I think we covered them all actually. We talked about the new gear, and I'm actually looking at the questions you gave me, funny enough. So I need to be professional, look at the questions I gave you. I said, can you hear the difference if people use software drums or real drums? We kind of answered that. The interesting thing is you've been doing this a long time, and I know that we're all great and you love speaking to everybody, but what have there been some favorite interviews or moments? You've been doing this podcast, I don't know, for forever. Were there some favorite artists or conversations you've had, or there's some funny things where it just went all completely wrong?
Never went completely wrong, but there was always something funny that came about one way or another. But I'd say, actually, the most interesting one I had, the one I was actually most proud of, was actually one of the guitarists. He's part of a couple death metal groups, but he was real known for Nowadays, he kind of does his own little group of Narcotic Wasteland. His name's Dallas Toller Wade. So that one to me was the highlight of the podcast, to say the least. There was another one, but I don't want to get into that details. That was kind of a little bit of a dark time in my life right there. It was kind of near the end of COVID there too, but I don't want to get into that one. That's a bit of a complicated story. But in terms of interviewing all like indie musicians, as well as even people who maybe just play one instrument and they just do covers on social media, that sort of deal. The one that always was funny was his name's Gaz, and he speaks Scottish, but he lives in Texas. So,
oh, that must be awesome. I don't think I've seen that one. You'll have to put a link, as we've mentioned it, you'll have to put a link to it in this video.
But I mean, I've interviewed a good number of people out of the UK, so I always want to make the joke that I'm slowly taking over so I could be the king next. So, but I would say there's been some in Greece and some out of
I did have one more question before we go. Is that what does the N''AT mean in the name of the channel? Because for life of me, I've tried to work it out and I have no idea what it means.
Well, you know how you were talking about earlier about dialects and that sort of stuff, or how people kind of like make the words up as they go along. So it's a whole thing with Pittsburgh, for instance. So Pittsburgh has a multitude of heritages from various parts of Europe. So you have Polish Hill, which represents all stuff from the Polish side. There's Hungarians, there's Germans. Obviously, you have your English speaking, the Irish. It's a nice blend of everything here too. So in that, it's basically and that, and it just kind of molded together. So whenever you say like maybe a sentence, you'll sometimes be like, there's a funny because sometimes they do a little pump up for like the sports verses, be like da 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 charge and that.
Yeah,
that'll deal. So
yeah,
it's a little bit of a Pittsburgh thing. So at least people get the idea that I'm from Pittsburgh. So the thing was, I thought of the name during COVID. I didn't really know what to go with. That one came to mind first, and it just stuck with me. So I said, screw it. Let's just go with it.
Yeah, I always wondered what it was because I just did a TikTok video this afternoon. I just told everybody that I'd be speaking to you later, and I didn't know how to pronounce it. N-A-T, I think I said. So it's a bit like if someone says "what's up" or "sap" or something like that. Yeah, it's kind of an abbreviation for a string of words that actually make sense.
All right, the other stuff is we do like pop, or instead of soda, then we say whoosher instead of washer, or they would say whoosher machine or something like that.
All right. Okay.
And there's yins guys instead of a you guys, that sort of deal. So.
The other question I had, the last one that I had written down for you was that how did you start the channel? What was the spark that made you say, "Hey, I'm going to create a YouTube podcast"?
Well, the podcast thing came actually during COVID, but the idea of just a YouTube channel in general had been like swirling around in my head for a while, but I never really got the motivation to just get up and do it. So when COVID happened in 2020 at the height of it, it was like, hey, just need something to do. I'm working from home. I have a whole lot of free time after I'm done with working at 4:30 or 5 o'clock. So I decided to start with just the drum covers because at that point I was starting to feel comfortable playing drums.
Yeah.
I started doing like some of the metal ones, at least more of the easier ones, or at least ones that are more doable, I should say, because a lot of metal is pretty hard. But the one that came up to mind was Bolt Throwers, No Guts, No Glory. So I figured it was a nice little way to like kick off the YouTube channel career right there. And at that time, it was actually my Roland TD-25K, and I was just using my one iPhone at the time, but it had the headphone jack. I think a lot of iPhones these days don't have the headphone jack in them anymore. And what you would plug into it was what was called an iRig. So the iRig would then plug it to the module, and then it would pick up the drum sounds and everything that came. In terms of the music, it would also pick up the drum sounds that you're playing, so then it sounds like you're playing over top of the drums that are coming from the song. And then it would all go into the iPhone as soon as you hit record. So it was an easier way to do it, but it never sounded as clean and crisp as it probably does now.
No, I remember iRig. I'm completely familiar with that. The first thing I ever recorded was I had an iPad, and I had an iRig, and I plugged it into my iPad, and I recorded some very badly played guitar. And that was about like 8-9 years ago. I can't remember. I was living in Berlin, but that was my start into the journey of recording music, which I'd never done before. But yeah, a lot of things actually happened during COVID. Yeah, a lot of things sprung into life. during the COVID phase. Are you actually gigging? Are you actually a working musician at the moment? You're playing drums, but are you actually recording and playing with a band?
I'm recording and playing drums, but not doing like touring, that sort of stuff.
The
So
odd gig?
I'm more of now just more strictly studio bands, to say the least. So recently I did release an EP with a friend of mine in Texas, and finally released on November 7th. Demiurge, Zombified, Enslaved, Deceived. So
All right. Okay.
it's actually short for Zed, which if you know the Pulp Fiction joke, it's meant to be Zed's dead, baby. Zed's dead.
I love that movie. I can't remember all the individual quotes. No, the Kind Machine probably will never play live. It'll just be me. I did actually have this mad idea. Once I've written enough material, I might find some musicians locally to maybe, who want to play my music, but I'm not very hopeful. So I think I'm just going to be a studio project and just release stuff up and put it out there in the world for anybody who wants to hear it, and it'll always be free. So anyone watching this, my music will always be free. If stream it if you must, but I don't really want to make money, and of course no one makes money from Spotify, so we all win there. But my music will always be available via my website. You can download it for free, and you can do what you want with it. I'm not precious or proud, so I'm not actually in this to make any money. I'm just doing this because I love music, and I'm just going to share it. And if anyone else likes it too, that's great. But if they don't, not everyone else likes the same piece of art. So, I mean, it's all art at the end of the day, and it's all subjective. But I don't think I'll ever play live. But never say never. You never know.
It's all tough for me, but I am part of, outside Demiurge, there's two other groups. The other one's what me and a friend of mine recently put together. It's called Nocturnal Monarch. And then there's another friend of mine. So I'm basically in three bands technically all together. And the last one's Shadows in the Dark.
Right.
So Tim Matthews, he put that whole thing together, and we kicking some ass. We actually, I think right now he released a song called Hallucination. So that one's a little bit interesting. Go check it out, y'all. And
well, if you leave the links in the description, as they always say, leave the links in the description. Yeah, everyone points down, don't they? In the video, always point down. The funniest thing is when they say, and if you like this particular video, you can watch another one up here, and then nothing appears on the screen. That always makes me laugh. Yeah, they always point up to the screen as if on YouTube, of course, you can actually make your other videos appear on the screen. They either forget to program it. So the guy says, and if you like this video, you can watch this one. And then they point, then nothing happens. I laugh every single time. It's not funny, I guess. It just means that someone just made a mistake or the software didn't work, which actually happens. So anyway, I think one of your questions to me, and I might as well answer it now because I just forget about it, is what I'm going to do in 2026. What are my plans? Well, my plans are to release more music. My third song, which I don't actually have a title for yet because I haven't written the lyrics. I'm a typical musician, I'm always write music first. And then because I want to be a solo artist now, I realize that people like to listen to lyrics and words, is I always come up with the lyrics second. So I will actually do the production, do all the music, and then I will actually record the vocal. Although with the last song, Believe, I did actually have the words and the melody for the chorus. I want to believe, and that's all I had. And I built the entire song around that. So I just had 4 or 5 chords. And I came up with a song that way, but generally it's music first. This third song doesn't have a title. What I did have a title, I actually wrote the chords and I started to play it. And like, I'm sure you've done this as a musician, I'm sure everyone out there has done this. As I played it, I thought, yeah, this sounds great. And then I found out I'd rewritten a song that someone else had already written 35 years ago. I actually ended up playing a song, and it was called what's the name of the song? Love is the Reason, Open Your Heart, from Human League. I just rewritten the song, basically. So I thought, well, that's really crap because I really like that chord progression. So I didn't give up. I decided that my next song is going to be, if I'm not going to do a cover of the Human League, at least I can write a tribute to it. And I'll write it, as a Kind Machine song. I'll play all the instruments and the chords will be slightly different, but it'll be done in the spirit and the feel of the Human League with maybe a bit of New Order and a bit of OMD thrown in, because that's what I do now. I take all these influences and I throw them into a pot. So hopefully I'm going to finish that in the next couple of weeks. So the music's done. Now I just have to write the lyric and record the vocal. I've also gotten to the world of video production, which is bonkers. I mean, before I would just, download a couple of videos from Pixel Bay or something. And I thought, no, I'm going to go out and shoot a real video, and I'm going to edit it. And I opened a whole can of worms. Producing a video is so time consuming. I hopefully this week we will hopefully I'll put my teeth back in. Hopefully this week we'll be releasing a video to accompany my last single, which was called Believe. Man, it's hard work. I mean, putting all the clips together. First of all, shooting the video, then editing the video, and then I've now got to learn either to use DaVinci, which is a free video editing piece of software. It looks all complicated. So hopefully I will actually do that. Although one function I did find is you can actually sync your video to an audio track, which works by magic. So you basically import all your video clips and you import the audio clip. You say, hey, just sync all this video to the audio, and it does it by magic. The first video I did, Hearts in Bloom, I was literally in an application. I was dragging all the video to the audio and trying to match it up 100%. It took me 4 days to do that. And I'm hoping that with DaVinci, I'm going to be able to produce this video. So I have a brand new video coming out this week, hopefully on YouTube, if I get it finished. And then I have other songs that I'm going to be writing. I have ideas for songs. They're rattling around. As soon as I get an idea, I just record it on a MIDI file and I park that and then I come back to it. So 2026, hopefully I'll try to commit myself to releasing a new song every 3 months. So hopefully by the end of the year, I'll have, a reasonable catalog that people can listen to, download, and stream. I'm not going to buy any more gear. I think I've got enough. Can't spend any more money on gear. That's just completely out. I might be looking to upgrade my mixing desk. I'd like a digital mixer instead of an analog mixer, purely because I want one. And also I'll be sort of doing some production work for that Sfumato effect as well. John's going to be back in January, John Bicknell, the bassist, so he'll be contributing some songs. I know that the guitarist has a couple of songs and Stuart has 3 or 4 songs, so I'll be producing those. So that's probably my entire musical year mapped out. I was tempted to get back involved in the world of radio because I loved doing radio shows. I've had offers from a few radio stations to be a DJ, and I've resisted them because purely it would take up far too much of my time. But you never know. I like to talk, and I might just leap back on the microphone. And I love playing everyone else's music. I love Mishappenings. I love Rain of Fire. Echo Matico is another band who I've just been listening to recently, a fantastic band, Distance from Zero, or all these great bands out there. There's the Fods, there are so many different bands out there who I just love playing. The Darren Holland project, for example, I love his music too. So I kind of always loved giving those guys a spin, and playing their music. And there are just I always say this on Facebook, and people must be sick of it. I always say, hey, listen to my music, I'm on radio, thank you for playing me. And I always say there are so many talented artists out there. It sounds like a throwaway line, but there are so many talented people out there. None of them are mainstream. None of them are signed up to any record labels, but everyone just produces music because they love it. So I might be tempted to just maybe occasionally get back in the microphone and present my own radio show. But I know one thing, I'm not going to be running my own radio station. I probably would like to do it being a guest DJ for an already established station where all the music is there, it's all been tagged correctly. I just have to log on to the database and play it. So I might actually do that. So that's what 2026 is probably going to look like for the Kite Machine.
And for Tony Ross as well. So all right. But I didn't feel like I fully answered your question in terms of the whole YouTube podcast, because at first it was just strictly drum covers, but then the podcasting came more so close to the end of 2020, going into 2021. I actually had heard about podcasting as well as even looking up the term. And for some reason, I just couldn't commit to it until I finally got my first interview in February 2021. And that was with a friend of mine I went to college with. He's now a drummer. He's I should say various. I think he's just part of this one country music group, which unfortunately escapes me at the moment. But he actually played a halftime show in one of the football games called the Orange Bowl. So
I know the Orange Bowl. Oh, of course, the Orange Bowl, yeah. Big college game.
One of them, I should say. It used to be a lot bigger. I guess that used to be the championship game or something like that. I don't know. But nowadays it's just one of those regular bowl games before it leads up to the big BCS championship games. So, but after that interview, I just started reaching out to various musicians, more so drummers at the time. And then I just interviewed them, just trying to get to know them a little bit more. It was a good way for me to reach out because it was good to connect at the time. Since COVID, we were locked in the whole time. but also for me because I'm a bit of an introvert. So I got bad with starting just regular conversations.
I wouldn't have guessed it.
Well, we find at least common ground here too, so we're at least able to talk about that. So, and eventually did stumble upon Vox and Sticks, interviewed them, and the rest is history. And here we are today.
How many episodes have you done? I mean, do you have it in your head? I mean, it must be hundreds, yeah?
You'd be right, but my problem was some of the episodes would go like close to like kind of where we are right now. We're almost at an hour and 30 right now, but some of them went like over an hour, sometimes close to 2 hours, depending on like who I was interviewing. And sometimes I split them into two parts. So the number looks higher than it probably should. But if I had to guess, over 300.
That's fine. That's a good body of work. That's a good body of work. No, COVID actually was quite good. I use pre-Sonos software. I use Studio One. I did start out on Logic as my DAW, and I love Logic. It's got a great sound library. But I ended up using Studio One for various reasons that are too boring to mention on this podcast. I don't want to get too technical and too nerdy. But during COVID, of course, pre-Sonos started these meetups. Virtual meetups, again for the same reason, just the way to keep in touch with people, and they keep going. COVID is supposedly over now, and that's another story. And we still get together the last Friday of every month, and I've actually made good friends and met a lot of very good people who are making really good music. It's a small community, but that's another example, maybe, and kind of a bit of a parallel with the way that you got into podcasting, was that something that started out because of COVID has now taken on a life of its own. So, I get together and talk to these good people. Some of them are pre-Sonos employees, so, we get to talk about nerdy stuff, but some of them are great musicians who I still keep in contact. And Keith Chadwick was a big inspiration to me, I must say. If he's listening, I doubt with it. Well, I'm gonna send him a link, and I'll make sure he watches this video. So Keith, if you're watching, you've been a great influence, and probably you're one of the people who made me to think, yeah, I can do this. I can be a solo artist, and I can actually try and sing, because I can't sing at all. For example, if it takes me what? I mean, it will take me maybe a couple of weeks to do a production, and then a whole week to do the singing. I mean, literally, I've got to do take. I mean, I do it bit by bit. I can't do a performance. I can't sort of get up to the microphone and grab it and sing, my lungs out for the whole song. I have to record it bit by bit. So, I record the first verse, and I do about like 40 takes, and then I'll just take the one that I like. And then, of course, I've got to clean it up, and I've got to pitch correct it, and I've got to maybe use a few more tricks in my effects box to give it a bit of bite, to make it, sound half decent. And then I'll go on to the chorus, and then the next verse. One thing I won't do is I won't cut and paste. So I won't just sing the chorus and then cut and paste it all the way through. I will actually try and sing it. I will actually sing everything and stitch it all together to try and make it sound like a performance. But I'm not a natural singer. And Keith, also by his own admission, if you're watching, would also say he's not a natural singer either. But man, just get in front of the microphone and just do something and just express yourself. So that always for me was the thing that was holding me back. I've always admired other songwriters. Stuart in That's from After Effects is a great songwriter. John Bicknell has his own band who plays bass called Drums and Wires UK, and writes his own songs as well. He's also a great songwriter. I really admire people who can just go on a piano and just come up with a melody and then play the chords and then actually create a song. I think it's beautiful, or can just pick up an acoustic guitar like Stuart can and just write lyrics and just strum a couple of chords and you've got a song. I can't do that. I just never had the ability to do that. So, but these people I mentioned, like Keith and other people who remain nameless, have just inspired me. Basically say, yeah, I can actually do this too. And I'm so happy that I did, because I'm just having a great time doing it. Yeah. So as a result of COVID, I still keep in touch with these people, and we still talk every single day about songs we're releasing, and obviously nerdy stuff, about pre-Sonos equipment and music production in general. So there's two sides to it, isn't it? I mean, I'm an artist and a musician, but also I'm a music producer, and I'm into sort of the music production side as well. So, I do get excited about what compressor am I going to use. Not almost the same, but on the other side, I get excited about, if I play a particular song and I play something and it really emotionally moves me, I get the same kind of level of excitement, probably more on the music side. I mean, obviously that's much more thrilling because that's the end result. Nobody sees all the production work, nobody cares what compressor I used on a song, and nobody cares what software I was using. They just hear the song and they like it, it sounds good. And actually evokes a response, an emotional or non-emotional. So either I hate it or I like it. But I still have these people to thank. And I think that's something good that's come out of COVID. Thinking about it, the whole thing that came out of COVID was That's Formato Effect, my radio show, which introduced me to other musicians that then sort of inspired me to be who I am. So although I'm no longer a radio DJ, that was time well spent. And I learned an awful lot by doing it. I learned an awful lot on basically, I used to hate my own voice. And the first few radio shows I had is I was going, oh, now we have the latest single from, and I hated the sound of my own voice, but now I don't care. I can do podcasts, I can sing. I got so used to listening to myself on the radio, because I don't know about you when you do the post-production, but when you do post-production, because I always used to put out a podcast version of my radio show. So you're listening to your own voice, and then you're EQing it, and, and you're compressing it, and you want to make it sound good. You're removing all the reflections and the reverb from the voice, and I don't care anymore. I don't care what I sound like. So, the whole thing has been a positive journey. It's actually ended up with the Kind Machine, and I'm so thankful to everybody who helped me along the way, who has been involved in that journey. So if any of you are watching that, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Here I am, the Kind Machine. I wouldn't have got there without you. So perfect.
Actually, it's almost like we were trying to close up right now, but actually, I did want to ask about sports real quick. I guess.
Oh yeah, I love sports.
Are you more into the soccer, or I guess, did you go to I think they had one in Frankfurt, right? It was an NFL football game.
It was the first NFL game in Berlin. And I can't remember who played. I kind of lost track with American football a little bit. I used to be a big fan way back. I used to watch every Super Bowl live in the UK. I can remember some great games. I mean, who can't forget that Joe Montana drive against the Bengals? Basically they were down, and he had like a 2-minute drill. He throws out to God, I can't remember the names. Roger Craig would probably caught one, another great player. And then who else? Jerry Rice.
Rice.
They won it in the last minute. Joe Montana for me was the quarterback. I mean, I know that people talk about Patrick Mahomes, the new guy on the block, but I remember Joe Montana. For me, he was great. Some people will say Joe Naismith. You can go back as far as you want in history. But I was in the 80s and the 90s a big fan of American football. I host Super Bowl parties, but somehow in the last 15 years or whatever, I kind of have lost track with what's going on. My team were the Commanders. I can't call them anymore what they used to be called, because I lived in DC, right? So I have to call them the Commanders now to be politically correct. But they were always my team. I actually went to RFK and saw them play the Dallas Cowboys. I don't think I've ever experienced such an atmosphere. It was the Commanders against the Cowboys, and it was a big game. I mean, and the atmosphere was just loud. So that was basically my sports teams. Baseball, I got into that too. But when I was living in DC, they didn't have a franchise. So I had to get in my car and go up the I-90 and go to Baltimore to watch the Orioles. And I think I saw one game in their old stadium before they moved to Camden Yards, which is a great stadium. So the Orioles were called my baseball team. I got into hockey too. So the Caps were my team, so I've never really got into basketball. That was one thing that I couldn't get into. I tried. I went to the Washington Wizards, I think they were called. Yeah, I couldn't get into that. That wasn't my thing. But hockey, I loved. Boy, some of those games could go on. I mean, the 8th period of overtime, you're waiting for someone to score, and it's 2 a.m. in the morning. I'm thinking, please, someone score. I just want to go. I have to work the next day. Please, can I go home? So American sports. Yeah. Soccer, of course. I've always been a big soccer fan growing up as a kid. As far as I can remember, I've got early photographs of me kicking a ball, a round ball, so soccer was always my thing growing up as a kid. And, you dream of being a soccer player, of being a professional soccer player. And then, I mean, life's really terrible, isn't it? As a kid, you either want to be a rock star, right? You want to be a pop star. You want to be like the guys you see on TV, or you want to be a professional footballer. And none of these things are ever likely to come true. So you're automatically set up for disappointment right from the age of 10, I mean, life sucks sometimes, and you get to about 14 and someone says, oh, you really need to knuckle down and get some schooling. You're not going to get anywhere without school. And you say, no, I just want to go outside and kick a ball and I want to play my guitar. I'm not interested in quantum physics. Yeah, but now actually I'm very interested. I'm very interested in science, and I love watching documentaries about quantum physics. I find them totally fascinating. But yeah, I think we're set up for failure. So anyway, I was a big soccer fan, but I'm not so much these days. I mean, there was a time when I would literally watch every single soccer game live. I did watch a game this afternoon, but I remember, when I was living in the States, my wife at the time, she would say, "Do you want to come out shopping?" And I would say, "No, no, no, no. It's a lunchtime. I'm watching the game. You go. I mean, today I'm going to go out anywhere. If there's a game on, tough. I'm not going to sit in and watch it. But sports has been a big part of my life. I guess I'm competitive in some areas.
You still try to carry it over there too. Yeah, sorry, my light's been acting funny.
That's okay.
I guess give me too much. So.
Oh, I tell you, rough thing. I used to go and watch the Pens play the Caps. That was tough. I literally, as soon as the game was over, I was glad to get to my car and get out of there. You know what I mean? I mean, because like a lorry load of fans would come down from Pittsburgh. And I know I wouldn't say there were fights, but I would say there was quite a strange atmosphere in the car parks after the game, depending on the result.
Little one too many shots on the painting booth, as I like to say. So I can see why. All right.
Of course,
cool.
The Penguins were the team in my time. They were the team. They had Mario Lemieux, I think it was his name, and Jaromir Jagr. Although Jagr ended up playing, I think, for the Caps later on in his career. But I mean, the Pittsburgh Pens were the team in the NHL. I don't know how they're doing these days.
A little on and off, but they've been showing it, but they can't seem to win in overtime, which is kind of a bummer. So
yeah, and of course the Steelers, of course, are absolutely legendary with the terrible towels. I think they're called the terrible towels, right? Where they wave these yellow things around. Did they move? They were in Chicago Phil. Did they move to a new stadium, or are they still in the same place?
They're still in the same place. Back then, it used to be Free River Stadium, but I think it was before the new millennium kicked off. They tore that down and they built Heinz Field. Now I think it's AccuSure Stadium. And there's PNC Park where the Pirates play.
Yeah, you have the trend here in Germany as well. I mean, you basically get corporate companies renaming stadiums, which is a real pain in the neck. I mean, there's a very famous football team in Germany not far from here called Borussia Dortmund. They're always at the top of the German league. Bayern Munich are the big team in Germany, but they're always there or thereabouts. Yeah, and they have this big stadium. They have a massive, massive fan base, and the stadium was called Westfalenstadion, which is but then this company came in from Signal Iduna, and it's now called Signal Iduna Park. It's just like the corporate world is just like just taken over football, and to make money from it. Recently, I read well, it's FIFA and UEFA. Anybody who runs a sports organization is in it to make money, right? So I don't know what it's like now to pay for your cable fees to watch sports in the US, but I bet it goes up astronomically every year. Or you'll find that like Disney Plus or Paramount Plus have the rights to these games. And then you got to have like a subscription. This channel, if you want to watch this number of games, you have to have a subscription to another channel to watch another games. And I think the ordinary people on low income and people who basically have kids, it must get to a stage that I can't afford. I love sports, but I can't afford to watch it. Is that the same in America? This is certainly happening in Europe with soccer.
I don't know about soccer wise, but in terms of like some stations, I know there's like Peacock, there's HBO Max. I don't know if they still do that actually, but it's probably just HBO right now. But they have all the various apps, and they'll probably also show various games that'll be like posted on there, for instance. But like I said, it's more like streaming or subscription based, to say the least. So I see what you mean.
Yeah, we can get what's called an NFL pass here in Europe. So if I want to watch every single NFL game, I can buy a pass. A season pass is like 600-700 400 euros or something. It's not a small amount of money. It's quite an investment. I just can't justify. So I'd rather buy a new mixing desk than actually watch 68 NFL games, to be quite honest. And I can see why more people are pushed into the arms of watching illegal streams, and unfortunately, the companies try and shut it down. And for example, one thing I read about today is that there was a warning that don't buy. There's this sort of like free Amazon stick. You can buy like a USB stick, and someone will sell it to you. And obviously the service they're offering is you can stream all these sports events for a very, very low fee, very low subscription, if not free. But of course it has malware. So the moment you shove it into a computer or whatever, it's going to install malware onto their computer. And basic criminals will keylog. They'll watch every time you log onto your bank account. You put in all your passwords and whatever, and they collect it all, and you could be susceptible to fraud. So people are sort of pushed because they don't really want to either pay a lot of money for subscription services. They're kind of pushed into using these illegal services, and then they end up getting caught out. I think it's a bit of a shame, but yeah, I'm a big sports fan. You got me talking about sports now.
Definitely something to talk about there too, but it's all good. Actually, where were you living at when the U.S. beat the then Soviet Union at the time in 1980?
Oh, in 1980, I was actually still living. I was living in London. No, was I? Yes, I just moved to London. Yeah, I remember at the time hearing something about it. It was actually a big thing. Yeah, was it the Olympic Games?
It was the semifinal because they had to play Finland afterwards in order to win the gold. But I guess I think it was the semifinal between the U.S. and USSR, and it was quite the upset for the obvious reason because then the Soviet Union, it's a pretty big deal. Those teams, they hit really good. They play. They're super intellect, that sort of deal. Super intelligent. I mean, and then you got these jockeys from the USA who have to go up against these big brutes of the USSR. So,
yeah, I can imagine that was a big thing. I do actually remember that. I remember a very famous basketball game that was along similar lines, wasn't it? I can't remember the actual event, but there was a big, huge basketball game. It was also like USSR against USA or something. I can't remember. Yeah, I mean, I really took to American sports because in the 90s, streaming wasn't really readily available. So living in the US, access to UK sports and soccer was non-existent. I mean, UK soccer was carried on some channels. So I really threw myself, because I love sport, I kind of adopted US sport for 4 or 5 years, and I was going to games, bought a season ticket for the Orioles. Well, a game plan, not a season ticket. I couldn't afford to go to every game. Yeah, and I went to the All-Star game from 1993, which was in Camden Yards. And Cal Ripken Jr. was MVP, and one of those rare occasions, I think, where the National League lost. It's always one conference against another, isn't it? So yeah, one of the rare occasions. Yeah, I really did adopt sports. I tried to play sports. I was quite active playing soccer until in my 30s, and then I was running around one day and I got chest pains and thought I was going to have a heart attack. And I thought, Tony, it's time to stop running around. You're not 20 anymore. You can't do this. So I kind of had to give that up. So I kind of regretted that because I really enjoyed playing soccer as a kid. And was reasonably good between the ages of about like 16 and 24, and quite enjoyed it. Never at a professional level, but I mean, enjoyed playing soccer. And yeah, I still follow sports today. Formula One, I can't help it. I don't know. I know it's just like cars going around in a circle. But I do watch Formula One, and I followed that ever since I was a kid as well. That's another big sport that I really like. I kind of watched IndyCar. I always watch the Indy 500 from, is it Indianapolis?
Yeah.
That's always, what they call it, the Brickyard? I can't remember the name of the course. There's a nickname for the course anyway. But I always watch that. That's also an event. So I'm not really a big motor sports fan, but I've always grown up liking Formula One. So although I didn't watch the Formula One from Las Vegas because it was on like 4 a.m. in the morning and I was asleep. But there was a time when I would get up in the morning to watch Formula One, but I'm too old now. I need my sleep. I can't get up at 4 a.m. in the morning here to actually watch Formula One as much as I love it. So yeah,
he keeps himself busy, so that's pretty cool. All right, but Tony, we're almost out of time. But did you have any other questions for me? Otherwise, we could just jump into the last one I wanted to ask you real quick.
No, I think I covered all the questions I want to ask you. Sure, of course, if we were in a bar having a few beers, I'd probably ask you questions all night. But it's that sudden pressure. It's that kind of thing when someone says, "Do you have any more questions for me?" And you go, oh! "No, I can't think of any straight away."
They'll come to him later. Be like, "Wait, I've got to ask you this one." So
yeah, I'll send it to you by email or something. I'll say just one more thing, like the Apple presentations. Just one more thing.
Yeah, but instead this time, the question being about a message of hope for that matter, is more so advice. So, like I said, you've been kind of around for a good while. You've seen, you quote unquote, you've seen it all too with like the classic rock groups and all that sort of stuff. So, I guess for people in my generation and even like some of the ones that come later, I guess what would be your advice for people who perhaps want to get into music or do something similar in terms of radio or even doing their own music?
That's a very difficult question. What I'm learning is just do it. I fall into the trap where you think you need to know everything before you can start to do something. Like you need to master every single scale, know every single guitar chord before you actually start creating anything, or you need to know every single piece of music theory before you can start playing the piano, or you need to know everything about music production. You need to understand frequencies and frequency ranges. You need to understand how to basically do sidechain compression. You need to learn every trick in the book before you can start creating something. Forget all that. Just do. Doing is by learning. That's how I basically got into it. I didn't know how to play guitar. I just was inspired to play something. So I'm going to learn how to play Smoke on the Water. And I learned how to play it, and then I learned a few chords. That would be my advice. Just create. I know I'm stealing phrases from people now. Just go create. Just go create something, and just accept at the beginning is that you're going to suck. Just accept at the beginning it's going to sound terrible. If you're going to mix something, it's going to sound awful the first time you do it. Second time, maybe not so bad. 200th time might be good. Basically you just have to put the reps in. There's no other way around it. You just have to put the reps in eventually, but don't let that stop you actually creating something. Just do something. And then whatever you have at the end is what you have. Heck, you might not be proud of it, but it's a learning process. So that would be my advice: is don't let the fear of failure or the fact you think you have to know everything stop you from actually doing something. I think that's actually my big takeaway, because I've learned about that. I've fallen into the trap. I mean, now actually I think I'm mixing and producing my songs a little bit quicker, more efficiently, and I kind of know what I'm doing. Where before I would just think, oh, I learned that trick. Oh, I've got to incorporate that into this. Whether the song needed it or not, or the mix needed it or not, was completely irrelevant. I would just do it. That's not the way to go. I mean, don't spend your time hours and hours watching tutorials on YouTube about how to mix. I mean, yeah, of course you can watch them. You'll find some people who are actually giving good advice, some people giving bad advice, but basically just do something. The way that I approach it now is I start out a mix and I want to have sound in my head. Now, how do I get that sound? I'll find out how to do it, and then I'll go on YouTube, or then I'll just go onto a web browser and type it in. But I won't think, oh, I have to learn absolutely everything about the process before I can start creating. So, and then it's the reps. Just keep putting the reps in, and everything will improve. And I think that's whether you want to learn to play piano, you want to learn how to play guitar, you want to learn how to play with other people, you want to learn how to record your own music, release your own music. It's a lot more than just about making music these days. You've got to go on social media. You've got to learn how to use software. You've got to learn how to produce podcasts. You've got to learn how to upload stuff, and you've got to learn all the tips and tricks for creating media content, because it's all about media creation these days. But again, don't think, oh, I have to learn this piece of software from A to Z before I can upload anything to YouTube or to TikTok. Just go out and create it, and then you'll get better. And if you don't know how to do something, find out how to do it and then incorporate that into your workflow. That's going to be my message, I think.
A different sort of message, but yeah. All right. But nonetheless, still smoking like a true prodigy. So, yeah, it's all cool.
Exactly.
All right. But I think earlier, and I think even before we started the interview here, I guess you said you've actually coming on 5 years since the whole thing with the cancer scare.
Yep.
All right. I guess just fill in the audience real quick. I guess you've been doing okay. I guess.
Yeah, I'm doing very well. I mean, obviously, it was a traumatic experience back in 2020, and then I had a second cancer diagnosis in 2021, a year later. I've survived both. I was fortunate. I had really good treatment. And everything so far is good. I class myself a cancer survivor, so I will never ever let go of the fact that it could reoccur. And if you suffered from cancer, I'm afraid that's the way it is. But on the bright side, I'm coming up to 5 years from my first cancer, and I can say that I'm cancer free. I've had all the scans. They fall away gradually. I mean, at the beginning you have to be scanned regularly, and now The scans are less often, I should say. And everything's good. I did actually manage. There's a if anyone's watching, there's a charitable foundation called the Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation, and they're based in the US. The cancer that I had was called bile duct cancer, but it's more commonly known as cholangiocarcinoma. It's a very rare form of cancer, and it's always diagnosed very late. So the prognosis for most people is very, very poor, because by the time you actually get to the stage where it's discovered, your treatment options are limited. If you're lucky, you'll have a surgery option like I did, but more often is the case is that you're talking about obviously chemotherapy, and you're not looking at a cure. So it's a very, very insidious form of cancer, because the survival rate is very, very low. I mean, the 5-year survival rate is 4%. It's that grim. I am fortunate. I am going to be one of the 4%. Because I just got purely lucky at the end of the day. I won't go into too much detail, but I volunteered as a mentor for the Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation. So basically my role is to be put in touch and help other people and talk about shared and common experiences. So if anyone's out there and got a bit of money, look up Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation. They're based in the US. They do fantastic work. Send them some money. They do really, really good work. Because one thing that I know when you get a cancer diagnosis is you're completely on your own. You're scared out your wits. You think, well, that's it. I'm done for. I'm going 6 feet under. It's the end of my life. But it's not that. It's more about that. Cancer actually is probably more about living than it is more about dying, funny enough. So if you do have any cash and you want to throw it around, this is an advert for the Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation. Buy
promotional material. So yeah,
buy something from their shop. They've got great, cool T-shirts and whatever. So I actually then want to give something back, and that's why I volunteered as a mentor. So I do actually keep in touch with people, and we just talk about obviously treatment options and common experiences, because a problem shared is a problem halved. I think that's the phrase. Yeah. So in answer to your question, Brian, it's all going good. I'll never say that I'm completely 100% cured, because you can't tell what the future will bring. But I am fortunate. I'm alive. I'm lucky, and that's what's motivated me to, create the Kind Machine, spread kindness and empathy and compassion, because the world is sadly lacking from all those things I mentioned. So that's what I want to try and do.
That sounds good. And keep doing what you're doing out there, Tony. And
thank you, Brian. And keep doing what you're doing.
Yep. Actually, just real quick, I know you gave some shout outs earlier, but I guess you want to tell the audience again what social media and stream platforms you guys are on, so they can check
Oh
out
my God,
music.
yeah. I mean, you can find me on, I have my own website called thekindmachine.com, thekindmachine, or one word.com. And there you'll find my music. I've only got 2 songs. You can download them for free. There's a few photographs and a couple of videos. When this video is released, it will also be there too. And of course, I'm on every single social media platform that you can think of. I don't think there's one that I'm not on, apart from Snapchat. So I'll be on Blue Sky, I'll be on Twitter, I'm on TikTok, YouTube, although I've only have 1 video recorded so far, Facebook, Instagram. What else have I left out, Brian? What else? There can't be too much left on the list.
Let me say Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, the Blue Sky.
Yeah.
Did you say Twitter or X? I guess
Twitter,
whatever it is.
X, as it's called. Reluctantly. Like most people, but that's why I moved to Blue Sky. But everyone uses X, so you've got to keep in there. And generally, the username is the Kind Machine, all one word. So if you want to find me on Twitter, the handle is the Kind Machine. If you want to find me on Instagram, it's the Kind Machine. And pretty much you can just, But if you go to my website, thekindmachine.com, or you can look me up on Facebook, you'll find all the links to my social media. I do have a Linktree page, which is called Linktree, whatever it is, .ee, the Kind Machine. So you'll find all my links to all my social media there.
All right, sounds good. So Tony, thank you guys so much again for coming on here. So everyone, make sure you go hit Tony up here. He's now going to the name of the Kind Machine, but also check out that Simoto effect as well. So I'll have to see what the future holds at some point. Maybe they'll get some new material out with that Simoto effect at some point. But you've also got the Kind Machine in the works here too. So let's go help our brother out there too. So Tony, thank you again so much again for coming on here. So you stay safe, rock God, and just one last thing, a quick pose. Stay tuned, y'all.